Okay, so just to make sure, each family unit should have a pyramid-colored booklet. Those are going to be the PowerPoints that our couple is going to go through and teach off of. And then you have a guide. So everybody should have a fill-in-the-blank type of study thing that you'll go through as well, okay? Does anybody not have those? Right here? Okay, we will... In M, okay? Emily, if you could get 3 sets from the table back there, that would be great, okay? All right, so this is a first of 3 monthly gatherings that we have for both parenting and marriage. And so the first 2, tonight and in October, are going to really be geared toward parenting. And in October, we have a Christian counselor, Pascal Wright, who's going to be coming and teaching on instilling identity into our children. And Pascal is a counselor that we trust. She taught about 1.5 years ago and just had a tremendous response to her teaching and the time that we had together. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be the last Friday of October. I want to say it's the 27th. Same scenario, we'll meet in here. And just instilling identity into your kids in a culture where gender identity is fluid. We'll talk from a biblical point of view of how do we raise young boys and girls and what goes into that and what the roles of parents and in establishing identity. And it's going to be very, very good. It's going to be interactive. Pascal is an excellent teacher, so you definitely want to mark your calendar for that. There'll be details coming up in the bulletin as well. And then I have some book resources to take a look at in the foyer as I was preparing for this time over the summertime, doing some reading. Have some things out there that you can take a look at. One in particular that I came across, and this is a book that I highly recommend every parent getting. It's called The TechWise Family. The author, Andy Crouch, was the general editor for Christianity Today for a number of years, has written 2 of my most favorite books over the last 10 years that I've read, and from a Christian perspective on ministry and life. And so this is his most recent one. It's on the TechWise Family. And he offers a very sobering, lot of statistics involved in the whole social media technology realm and how the influence that has on children and youth. And then he offers some solutions that are pretty radical. And highly recommend going through and doing this, reading this book. So, so the TechWise Family, Andy Crouch, is an excellent resource. Okay, well, let me go ahead and open up with a word of prayer, and then we'll have Pastor Chris come and lead the first part. So what the plan is for tonight is we have about a half hour, 35 minutes or so. We'll go until about 10 till 8, break for dessert, and then come back at 8 for a video time. I think the video is about 20 minutes long, 24 minutes long. And then we'll dial in the couple from Tennessee, and then they're going to come and have a question and answer time with us live. So it's going to be, hopefully it's going to be beneficial, useful, and challenging and insightful all at the same time. So let me pray, and we'll get started. Father, we come before you right now. Lord, God, you made it very clear in Scripture, God, that your value that you place on children and the welfare of children and youth. And Lord, we know that that's in your heart. And as parents, God, we have that same desire to protect, guard, shepherd, and lead our children. And God, our culture can be counter to the things of the kingdom. And God, as we look at some of the challenges that exist today, Lord, it is a heavy topic. I pray, Holy Spirit, that you would come, that you would bring insight into areas of difficulty. But God, that we would address hard issues to be able to move toward health and wholeness and in a manner that children and families can be united together and grow healthy and have a great understanding of who you are and who each other is. And so, Lord, we offer this time to you. Pray that you would bring insight and wisdom to us as we shepherd and care for our kids. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, Pastor Chris.
Well, thank you for your time. I know on Friday you're coming from work. You probably had to rush here against some bad traffic. We're really grateful for your time, and we do want to honor it by trying to keep to the time frame we've set. So I'm going to walk you through that singular page, and you see on it that Protecting Our Kids Online. Parents Who Fight put this together. Parents Who Fight is an organization created by Jesse and Sarah Siegand. They are the couple that we will be live with here in the latter portion of our evening together. And I want to walk with you through that. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But first, I do want to just walk with you through the conversation about the reality of the online world and the world that our kids are facing that is so very, very different from the world that we were raised in, regardless of the generation that we may be in. If you are in the boomer generation, it was very different. If you are in the Xer generation, as I am, it was very different. I had no opportunity to see pornography online. In fact, I was exposed to pornography by my cousins who were pastors' kids, who had ripped it off from the corner grocery store and gas station. So when you talk about exposure to illicit sexuality, which is what pornography is, the depiction of illicit sexuality, it is an absolute onslaught in our world. And if you happen to have an opinion, and I don't think you'll be here and have this opinion, but if you happen to have an opinion that pornography isn't a negative thing, well, then you're certainly not going to be on page with us. We are of the opinion that it's profoundly damaging, that it's addictive material. We have studies that obviously prove from a scientific perspective that pornography is among the most addictive realities in our world today, that individuals can become addicted to pornography within 2 to 3 watchings of it within close proximity to each other, because what it does is it releases dopamine and that which in our body that causes us to get addicted to it, right? It feels good. It causes reactions in us that initially feel good. And so pornography is a massive problem. It's a massive problem for men. It's a massive problem for women. And it has become a massive problem for children. The statistics are staggering about the reality of how many kids are graduating high school and are already sexual addicts. The majority of young men graduating high school today are regular viewers of pornography and are, in all likelihood, should they take the test that would kind of define you as a sexual addict, they are likely sexual addicts. That is the reality of our world today. And because that's the reality, we need to talk about it. I have no desire to scare you unnecessarily tonight. I'm not trying to feed fear. None of us need help with that. I'm raising teenagers. I don't need help being afraid of the world. I know the realities in my own life, and I know the struggle in my own life. And so I get it from my kids. But all that said, I think we need to be sober and equipped with reality, because for many of us, this is just an area that we have not necessarily paid a great deal of attention to with regard to how our kids are being exposed, what they're facing in their world, the reality of phones in nearly every one of their hands, and just what they're being exposed to. So that's our goal. And let me also remind you this, that as we approach this subject, I just want to share with you philosophically, the goal isn't that we're raising just good kids. We want to raise kids with a heart after Jesus. And the reality is that there isn't anything that damages our identity probably as deeply than that of sexual sin. There is a reason that sexual sin is identified so clearly in Scripture. And we even know this in the conversation of our culture, that now we have identities ascribed to people that become a primary demarcation on their life. LGBT, I'm gay, I'm lesbian, I'm transgender. And we maintain that the Scriptures would suggest that it is only God who has the right to place an identity upon us. We maintain that in this conversation around sexuality, that child of God is the right definition that would hang on anyone. and that we don't believe in biological determinism, as some have called it. We don't believe that attraction gets to define who we are. And we also, therefore, want to make very, very clear that in this conversation around pornography, why as a church are we talking about it? Because it damages lives, and because if we're not careful, we are allowing potential identities to form or be put upon our children that we don't believe are in keeping with who God has defined them to be. And so we want them to have hearts after Jesus. And we know, here's the reality. I have 4 kids, and I know they're each going to have to face this reality in their own time, in their own way. But my wife and I will do everything that's in our power to set them up to handle it as best as they possibly can. As best as they possibly can. And if we're honest, not many of us were really equipped well. I think I'm one of the rare people for whom my dad had the birds and bees talk with me, you know. And I remember that conversation. I remember the moment when he asked me this terrifying question. Hey, son, do you know what masturbation is? And it was like, I have no idea what it is, right? You're like, okay, here we go, right? And yet he had the fierce conversation with me. And here's the reality. He could have had a lot more. He could have had a lot more. And so what this night isn't a strategy to invest right identity in your children with regard to their sexual identity. That's not what this is. We don't have time to cover that. My wife and I have adopted a philosophy of coming-of-age trips and moments when we're speaking and investing into our children and having deep conversations with them. But we've also made decisions to have sexuality conversations with our children very early. And I think we need to consider having them earlier because of the reality of what they're being exposed to in the world. My wife and I want our kids to hear about sexuality from us before they hear it from anyone else. And so that tonight is not that, and we can address that at another time. But tonight is a way for us to try and practically safeguard our homes and our devices so that our children are able to be raised in an environment where we decide what they get exposed to when we think they're ready to be exposed to it. And by the way, I never think pornography is a good idea, but conversations around sexuality and how to steward relationships romantically. I, of course, have had a crash course in this because of raising my own kids. My daughter turns 15 in less than a month. And we were baptized into this online world. I mean, she's the first generation where she doesn't know life without smartphones. My daughter is among the first generation they have no clue what it's like to live without something in their hand that can connect them to the world. That's entirely foreign to us. I mean, cell phones, how did we exist without them? How did my parents ever rest 1 second without knowing where I was from 9 to 5 during summer days? But it was a different age, wasn't it? And so my daughter can't conceive of that. And by 8 years old, my daughter was asking for a phone. She's a socialite. That you have to realize that about my daughter. And by the way, every child is unique. I have a 12-and-a-half-year-old son who's not once asked for a phone. God bless him. He has an iPod. And by the way, an iPod is far more controllable, if that's the right word, than a phone. But you can control, or you can really help your child steward the phone as well. And we're going to get to those practices in the second half here. So in walking with our daughter, we gave her a phone for her 13th birthday. And she stewarded that well for a little bit, and then she didn't steward it very well because friends showed her means and ways to get around the boundaries we'd set in place. And I won't go into much more detail, simply just to honor my daughter, because she has her own story to tell, although she has given me permission. And so we had to take the phone away from her, and we had to take it away for approaching a year, 2 years. We took it away for a long time. And I'm now of the opinion that I really don't think anyone should have a phone before they're 13. And I may be of the opinion that if you can get away without giving your kid a smartphone until they're 16, that might be a good idea. I'm also of the opinion that you do need to equip them with a smartphone at some time before they're out of your house. Because the goal isn't just to shield your child forever from the world. Your goal is to help mature your child up to be ready to face the realities of the world. So we're not just trying to oh, it's terrible out there. Sex is bad. No, it's not. But a lot of the depictions of it are unhealthy. And we don't want you exposed to that. Just to give you a few thoughts here to consider, again, so that we can approach this in a sober fashion. I just want to share with you a few things that have come to my attention in the last 2 months. And several of these are news stories. It was a couple of months ago that I forget which news station it was, but I saw an interview online by a local news station in which teenagers and young adults were interviewed with regard to the realities of social media and now romantic dating relationships. And they were using terminology like in previous generations, this was first base. And here's second, and of course, full intimacy, sexual intimacy being your home. Well, in the world today, to a person, boys, girls, young men, young women, as they were identifying the realities of their world, and this was shocking to me, and I wish I could tell you, I just continually am shocked. But they said first base today is now taking pictures of your genitals and sending it to the other. So before you hold hands, before you kiss, you either using an app, like one of the apps that's very, very popular, I'm trying to remember the name of it at this moment. Come to me, mind work. I'm 41 today, I'm in trouble. Snapchat. There is this idea that if I take a picture on Snapchat, it will be there for 2 seconds and it disappears. But here's the problem with the online world. Nothing is ever fully gone. Ever. The online world is a permanent world. It can and probably will be found in the future. And so, first base, exchanging pictures of your genitals, amazing. Also, it was just last week that I saw the news story, and I think it happened earlier in the year, but it was just last week that I heard of it. There was a young 16-year-old boy who had sex with his girlfriend in their car. He had an audio recording of it, or it was a video, but you couldn't see anything, you could just hear it. And he shared that with his friends at school. The school counselors got a hold of this, and they called him in, and obviously, he was scared half to death, but they also shared with him that the, rules of our land suggest that could be constituted as child pornography when you're underage. And that should the parents choose to prosecute, that's possible that could happen. This young man from that went up to the top of a parking lot structure and jumped off. And now his family is actually suing the school counselors for scaring him unnecessarily. Whether or not that was right or wrong, I have no idea. But these things really, really happen. And of course, they're extreme stories. That's an extreme story, but it just goes to show you the realities of our world. I had a mother of a 9-year-old daughter in our church call me 2 months ago and saying, I need your counsel. I don't know what to do. My daughter, actually it was more than 2 months ago. It was right at the end of the school year, so it was June. My daughter has a school pad, right? And many schools do this now. My daughter has a pad, a little iPad, if you will, from school, and she was on there. She has anatomy class, or they're learning body parts. And so she just typed something in, very normal, innocent, typed it in. And for whatever reason, through the blockers came pornographic material. And this little girl, 9 years old, in our church, clicked one that led to a whole set of videos. And lo and behold, they discovered that for several days, this little girl had been mesmerized by these videos. But so much shame, so much pain, and just that tremendous sense of the loss of innocence. And what do we do? And where do we go from here? This is just the world, right? This is our reality. So we need to do whatever we can do to set our kids up to be protected. I think maybe one of the strongest endorsements that I could share with you with regard to the realities here is my own daughter. You know, my own daughter, she did not like it that we took her phone away for a season, and she has it back with severe limitations. And she knows that if she doesn't honor Jennifer and I in terms of our boundaries, that it will be a loss for a very long time, because relationships function on trust. And we want to be able to trust our daughter, and she's in a much better place with regard to the stewardship of this device and privilege than she was. And so just the other night, I have her password, and I literally went through every app on her phone, which are very few, by the way. But there's just a few apps, and I went through, and I looked through everything, and I said, what's that? What's that? Why that? Who's this? And I looked through all of her texts, and she just knows that Jennifer and I reserve the right to do that she's not going to exist on her phone in a world that she's not ready for without our help and stewarding it and oversight. There will come a day where we won't do that, where she will have her freedom, but our goal is to help train her for that day. But here's potentially one of the strongest endorsements I could give you, and it's this. She just said, Dad, if parents knew what their kids were doing on their phones, they would never allow them to have phones. And I was like, ooh, okay. And so let us think through this carefully and strategically. And for some of us, after tonight, we might have to go back and revisit some things with our kids. We might have to do a bit of a rewind. And I think we can just humble ourselves and say, Mom and Dad are trying our best to love you and steward this with you. And we realize that actually we haven't given enough thought to this yet. For some of us, we have younger kids, and this is all ahead. And so we can strategize and be prepared for that. Let's go ahead and look at protecting kids online. We decided that we did not need to reinvent the wheel, where Parents Who Fight have put together a helpful presentation just so that we can get exposed to the realities of this world. We're going to use it. And so we use this with permission from Jesse and Sarah Siegand. But you'll see they're protecting kids online. At the very top, it says, no parent can child-proof the world. A parent's job is to world-proof the child. In other words, to help prepare your child to handle the realities of this world as maturely as possible. Here's the likely reality. It is a very rare exception for anyone in this room or for any one of our children that we will steward our sexuality with total purity. For 99% of us, sexual brokenness is really going to touch down on our lives. And I can even tell you this, for 100% of us who engage romantically with another leading to marriage, 100% of us are going to experience sexual brokenness in some way, shape, or form. It's unavoidable because we are broken people, and that brokenness has profoundly impacted our sexuality. That's just the truth. In whatever way, shape, or form, even if there is an exposure to pornography, we just carry brokenness in our sexuality. So, as we come here to our job is to help world-proof our kids or help prepare them. One of our main goals is just this. Our job is never to shame our children where they've made missteps. Our job is to walk with our children in the midst of those missteps, should they happen, and call them up to maturity. I was really blessed this last Father's Day. My daughter made me a handmade card, my almost 15-year-old daughter. And in the card, she wrote, "Hey, Dad, I don't always show it, but I just want you to know how grateful I am that you work so hard to protect me. I'm so grateful. Thank you for loving me so much." Oh, man, that card is in my office. I will keep it forever. All right, very precious to me. So the best way, the next bullet point there, the best way to protect your child is to prepare your child. The best way to prepare your child is to prepare yourself, and that's why we're here. That's why we're here. By the way, if we're not engaged with our child with regard to conversation about their sexuality and helping them mature along the way, it'll be very, very difficult for us to have any reasonable conversation around why we're choosing to limit what they can be exposed to. It'll be very difficult to say, I guarantee it, if you have a 14-year-old social child like mine, it's extremely difficult to sit down and reasonably, rationally try to help them understand why you can't have Snapchat when every one of your friends has Snapchat. And my daughter, even at 9 years old, was saying, all my friends have a phone. And I said, no, they don't. No, they don't. And then every time I was around one of her friends, they had iPhones. And I eventually just said, Emma, all your friends have phones. You're right. You're not going to get one. I'm not raising all those kids. I'm raising a Manginelli. Sorry. And we have to have this regular conversation about holiness and being set apart. And I tell her this, sweetheart, I am not just after raising a good kid. I am after raising a disciple of Jesus. And I want to give you to him eventually, in a sense. I want to give you to him as pure as you possibly can be. That's what I'm after. So I don't care what all your friends are doing. I will commiserate. I will try to understand how difficult it is to be the only one who isn't experiencing certain things. And that's hard for a teenager. And so I think we need to have mercy in the midst of our plan. I think we need to be able to sit with them. But in the end, not move. No, I'm sorry. You can't have that. Nope, sorry. You can't do Instagram right now. Nope, sorry. You're not getting that app. YouTube, not a chance in the world, girl. Not a chance in the world, right? So walking with our kids through that, the best way to prepare your child is to prepare yourself. Okay, education. We have some fill in the blanks here that I'm going to provide for you. First is this. According to ScreenagersMovie.com, which, by the way, is a film about a doctor in Seattle who's raising teenagers. It's worth you checking out. Teenagers spend 6.5 hours each day on screens. Documented fact. Teenagers spend 6.5 hours each day on average on screens. 75% of children as young as 4 have their own mobile devices. Yes. In my own neighborhood, first graders, they're standing there at the bus stop and they got their phones in their hand. And my question is, do you have any limits on that phone? Have the parents, I don't know. Research shows that screen addiction affects the brain dramatically. And I do think that this is something to be aware of. I have noticed even for myself, I don't have ADD. For anyone who does have ADD, I in no way shame you in saying that. But sometimes I feel like I have ADD because of my stupid phone. Like, I wonder, like, what it was like when I had singular fixed attention. My wife and I will be sitting down to watch a show, and I'm like all the time tempted to grab my phone, and because I can do 2 things at once, right? And it annoys her to no end. She'll lean over and go, I thought we were spending time together, or something. What are you doing on your phone? Checking the Dodgers score, or something like, So it's a struggle for us. But imagine if that's all you know. Again, we're raising a generation where that's all they know. And I watched my daughter in giving her phone back just very recently to her. I just had a conversation with her last week, tears in my eyes, saying, Emma, I'm watching how often you're going for your phone. And you've probably noticed that the first question out of my mouth when I see you on your phone is, why are you on your phone and what are you looking at? And I don't mean to communicate suspicion to you, but I'm concerned about the volume of time you spend on your phone or the fact that you don't feel like you can be away from it sometimes. That bothers me, right? So we have this conversation a lot. The next bullet point, know the dangers, risks before allowing access. Predators, bullying, sexting, pornography, and mature content. There are a lot of predators online. Jesse and Sarah know the statistics here much better than I do. And as I sat with them in a presentation a month and a half ago, she detailed for me this reality. She simply said this: if you really are serious about protecting your children, you will not allow them to have any social media profiles, period. And you will only strategically choose when they can have those. In that, predators look online for young ones to prey upon. And you have to, I believe it's on Facebook, you have to be of a certain age. I forget what it is, 16, 18, something like that to have your, I think it's 16, but I could be wrong there. And yet parents all the time are allowing kids to have profiles younger, and they're just, when you're signing up, you're just putting a different date of age. Your parents, plenty of parents are doing that. And so we need to be wise around this, but I would tell you to really think through the social media platforms that you allow your child on. Our daughter is not on Facebook. Our daughter is not on Twitter. She has asked if she can be on Instagram. She is on Instagram on a private setting right now, and we only allow her to post on occasion. I have told her, one of the things that I've just told her is I said, your generation is an utterly self-obsessed generation. We're already broken, and every generation is already self-absorbed, but yours is the selfie generation. They are utterly obsessed with seeing pictures of themselves wherever they are. And I said, you will not do that. You won't do that. I don't want that for you, and I don't want you looking back going, oh my gosh, I was obsessed with myself. I don't want that for you, darling, okay? So the next bullet point, 30% of adolescents worldwide are targets of bullying and cyberbullying. And you see a lot of the sourcing here for this. And the next bullet point, over 40% of kids say they have seen porn online. And I would tell you, that's from teensafe.com, I would tell you that is a very low estimate. Whatever study that came from, I didn't want to over-exaggerate what was provided us here, but over 40% of kids say they've seen porn online. I would potentially put that almost double from just what I know and what I've heard. Average age of exposure to pornography now is between 8 to 11 years old. That is younger than previous generations when trying to get an understanding of when we're being exposed to illicit sexuality through pornography. It is younger. And yet many of us would say that either by dad or uncle or friend or neighbor or whatever it be, that we were exposed to illicit sexuality in some way, shape, or form at around the same time. You just see on the sheet here what apps are safe, what apps are dangerous. Jesse and Sarah provided us, this has not been given to you, but if you're interested in it, they gave us an app safety basics. And it will actually just tell you in their view, this is their opinion, but they've actually laid out on this sheet what apps you need to be cautious about at what age, and they just make recommendations here, and what apps are just flat out dangerous and should be limited until one is nearly autonomous on their own, and then of course they have their own choices to make. If you want this, all you need to do is to let me know. If you send me an email, I'm going to tell you this on several occasions. If you send me an email, chris@mc4s.org, we will make a digital copy of this and get it to you, okay? So, and then you see their resources, and really that's what the video is about, so I'm not going to spend any time on that here because it was from the presentation that I saw in early August that I asked Jesse and Sarah to create a resource that they didn't yet have created, and so they've been very gracious to us. They created a resource for us that now they're already getting requests from other churches to use. And it's a 4-point strategy on how to safeguard your home and devices. And so I think that'll be very helpful to you. So the conversation there. First bullet point under conversation with regard to now that we need to engage with our children in conversation. It says talk early and talk often. 68% of teens say their parents don't really talk to them about their social media or gaming use. So the vast majority of kids are active online or on their phones and having no conversation with their parents about it. And that needs to change for us in our house. And then you'll see here, you see sharing, and it says, before you share, think. You can just fill in the blank there. Before you share, think. And the think there, of course, is an acronym, and I want to give that to you. Think. T is true. H is helpful. I is inspiring. N is necessary. And K is kind. In our social media world, it's amazing what one kid will say to another that then gets blown up on social media. Yeah, you bet. Think it is true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind. Another thing to think about, this was a quote from Sarah, but she said this, with regard to the realities of phones and the online world, she basically said, I am wise to the fact that my child is only as strong as their weakest friend. And that's really something to think about. So I'm really talking with my daughter. Okay, to what degree are you seeing or experiencing the online world through your friends? And let's just talk honestly about this, okay? So talk with your children about privacy, about friends, about sexting, about the permanency of the internet. It is a total fallacy to think that I'm going to post something and later it won't affect me. In fact, a majority of companies now would tell you that they go online and look at the last 5 years of online history before they hire someone. The majority of companies are now looking online to see what sort of representation a person is putting forward, what sort of person, right? Because our online profiles is essentially who we want to be. It's not really who we are, but we're putting an image forward that we want to represent. And so companies are looking at it and going, okay, who does this person want to represent themselves as? The next bullet point, do not engage but flag, ask for help, and delay social media use. So if your kids are ever utilizing social media and have questions around that, the encouragement is to not have them engage, but to make someone else aware, an authority figure aware, that they have questions around someone who is contacting them. We do need to have conversation with our kids about pornography, how it's harmful to our brain, our forming brain. It's harmful to the adult brain. Studies about sexual addiction have actually proven that there are, this is far from technical, but you can get the technical side should you choose to. But there are basically superhighways that are created in the brain by addictive patterns. And of course, sexual addiction isn't different than any other. And so that's why when we're pulled in a direction that is addictive, it's so easily to get pulled upon because our brain knows to fire along what's been developed. And then give them an action plan. Give them an action plan, which is an acronym as well, and it's CAN DO. And this comes from a book. It's not a Christian book, to my knowledge, but it is a very, very helpful book. It's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and it is intended to help children understand this dynamic. Good pictures, bad pictures. So it's the CAN DO acronym. And so when a child is actually exposed to pornography, you have to help your child be prepared for the moment that they're going to see something they didn't intend to see. And what could we tell them to do? So CAN DO. C is close your eyes. A is alert an adult. N is name it. I saw pornography. That's pornography. That we want our kids to be able to identify it. D, distract yourself. Actually, Sarah, I like what Sarah said in the meeting I was at with her. She said, tell your son to go play Legos. Go watch a movie. Go climb a tree. Just go do something to begin to reset your mind. And then O is order your thinking brain to be the boss, which may sound a little weird. Order your thinking brain to be the boss. But that, again, comes from good pictures, bad pictures. And while it's a helpful philosophy, it's also a biblical construct. I mean, we know what Philippians 4:8 says, right? Philippians 4:6-8, be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God, that the peace of God, which guards your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And think on these, whatever's true and lovely and pure and right and of good report, think on these things. So again, close your eyes, alert an adult, name it, distract yourself, and order your thinking brain to be the boss. Okay, supervision. And then we will get some dessert. First bullet point, think of it like teaching your child to swim. Think of it like teaching your child to swim. A little bit at a time. So at first they're in the ankle deep, and then and eventually they're getting to the point where they have to learn to start to swim. And of course, you supervise them highly. You don't let them out of your view, because if you do, in seconds, it can turn deadly. But once you're confident, once they've proven themselves, once they've earned trust, once they have a developed habit, then you can begin to release more and more and more to them. And the goal eventually is that you're going to raise what society would call a well-adjusted, mature, prepared young adult to face the realities of this world. Second bullet point, keep devices in open areas and have regular audits. Mom and dad always have the right to know exactly what's going on your phone. I believe in that. Should you choose to not believe in that, I honor that. But there will come a point in time when we will not do that with our daughter, specifically with our children, all of them. But that's not right now. We have the right to always investigate. And in fact, when my daughter was struggling, I had a discernment. And it was late one night, and I went and I took her phone, and I started looking on it, only to discover that there was some real points of struggle for her. She was out of the boundaries that we had put for her. And so I also want to just tell you this. When your kids are struggling in this arena, it will show up in other arenas. So if you're watching behaviors develop that weren't there before, if you're watching a really short temper, if you're watching kind of dour, sour, yes, there's a lot of hormones going on. But I also would tell you, trust your gut. You know your child. Something's up. Pay attention to that and engage. I strongly discourage, well, they're just struggling, I'm going to give them their space. No. That's the moment you step in all the more. Not to belittle, shame, any of that, but to love and to serve. Okay? Third, set boundaries. Set boundaries. Recommend you think about time limits, bedtimes, and prohibited uses. During the school year, we have set a technology standard in our home where they get an hour a day. So post-school, homework being done, they get an hour a day so primarily my boys go figure, they like to play baseball games on the iPad or the phone or what have you, and they like to play baseball games on their PlayStation 4. And so they have an hour to engage in that. Our daughter likes to watch kid shows on Netflix, right? Our 6-year-old, she just loves that. And so when everything's done and she says, can I watch a Netflix show, right? So they have an hour a day to engage in such things. Just think about boundaries. Number 4, filtering, or bullet point 4 under supervision, filtering. You can filter at the Wi-Fi level and the device level. At the Wi-Fi and the device level. And we're going to give you how you can do that here on this video in just a few minutes. Monitoring. Know where your children are going online and who they are interacting with. Accountability. Accountability is how you measure achieved responsibility and learning. And so I think accountability is so important here. Where we help hold our children accountable now, it potentially sets the stage for them to understand that they need to be in accountable relationships even into their adulthood. That I am accountable, I remain accountable with regard to what I'm letting my eyes see, with regard to what I'm allowing my brain to meditate upon, and with regard to the motivation of my heart, all around the issue of sexuality. I, as a 41-year-old man, remain accountable for those things. I send a near daily report to my accountability partner answering those questions. Accountability, you'll see next, accountability is foundational to Christian living. We've been invited to live in the light. And we want to judge, and of course, according to the letter of 1 John, oh man, intimate relationship with Jesus is available when we live in the light. And by the way, you do recognize that 1 John acknowledges that we're going to fail. But in the midst of failure, we bring those failures to light and we keep walking with Jesus, with others, towards the goal of righteousness and holiness in our sexuality. You may have questions. For right now, I just want you to table them, because here's what we're going to do. And Dawn, you can come and give us practical advice, but we're going to take 10 minutes. We're going to get our dessert and come back to our tables. At 8:05, we are going to start our 20-minute video, because then we're going to pipe in Jesse and Sarah so that we can have Q&A. And here's what you can begin to prepare for. Dawn and I are going to be available up here for any questions that you have of us. But also you'll be able to see Sarah and Jesse up on the screen, and you'll be able to ask questions of them. And they live in this world a lot. They are raising their own family, but they've really made themselves experts in this field. And so as you would have questions, you'll be able to ask questions of them, okay?
All right. Great. Good job, Pastor Chris. Okay, so a couple real quick things. For our gluten-free friends, on the serving counter there, you'll find some cupcakes over there. There is the coffee stand on the other side of that wall. That's what I'm pointing to. So there are cupcakes there. They're gluten-free. Everybody else, there is a lot of dessert out there. So feel free to help yourself. There's the coffee stand, not the stand, but the coffee area set up. There's water there. And trust me, your kids are doing great. I just checked on them all upstairs. They're great. Don't feel compelled to go check on them. They're good. So
my wife just whispered in my ear, everybody's going to want the app sheet. Is that true? Yes. Okay, we'll go make copies.
Hello, and welcome to our 4-point technology strategy tutorial. Thanks for making this investment of time to learn how to better protect your kids online. My name is Sarah Siegand, and a couple of years ago, my husband and I started an online safety campaign called Parents Who Fight. We have one mission: to help parents protect kids online. We currently reach parents through digital resources like our website and social media, as well as live presentations to schools, churches, and community groups. We even make house calls in our local area to help families set up their entire safety protocol for their homes. In all of our interaction with parents, we hear one statement over and over: I want to do a better job monitoring what my kids are doing online, but there's so much to keep track of. We want to help you feel less overwhelmed and more equipped to strengthen your family's strategy for online safety. Like many of you, we are busy parents ourselves, so we understand the time and the effort and the energy it takes to raise kids in this digital age. We're hoping to make it a little easier for you today by giving you a 4-point technology strategy that you can adopt and customize for your family's unique circumstances, devices, and ages. This simple strategy will give you a roadmap and help you continue taking steps to further protect your family online. So let's get started. The 4-point technology strategy you're going to learn today involves these simple layers. Number 1, Wi-Fi. Number 2, devices. Number 3, apps. And number 4, searching. So let's dive in. Wi-Fi. Our first point addresses the broadest application of online safety control in the average American family, your home Wi-Fi signal. Thanks to the wonders of technology advancement, some really smart people have developed a way for every internet-enabled device within your home Wi-Fi signal to have simple safety settings that you control. That's right, every device. There are several products that will provide filtering and monitoring for everything that connects to your Wi-Fi without having to download or install something separate to every device. Examples of these products include OpenDNS, which offers a free product, CleanRouter, which is about $13 a month, and Circle, which is a one-time purchase of around $100. When you use a Wi-Fi filtering or monitoring service, you can apply safety settings to any device that connects to your home signal, even your kids' friends' devices. With products like Circle, which is what we use, you can set up every family member with customized age-appropriate settings, time limits, and website or app restrictions and blocking. We really love using Circle, so we wanted to share with you a little bit more about how it works. Take a look.
Circle, an amazing little gadget that pairs with your Wi-Fi and lets you control every device in your home, no matter what kind.
So can you set a time limit on Netflix?
Yep,
Can you filter out that website?
you betcha.
Can you pause the internet?
Yes.
What about tablets?
Covered.
Smartphones?
Covered.
Chromebooks? So what about scheduling a bedtime where the internet magically disconnects, but just for the kids' devices, so they actually go to bed on time like they're supposed to?
What? That's a yes.
Whoa.
It's basically the ultimate internet pausing, Instagram limiting, bedtime enforcing, homework helping, save the day device that is super duper simple to set up.
Nice.
Did I say it was simple?
Yes, you did.
It's pretty much the most awesome thing ever.
So yes, Circle is very easy to use and it's cost effective. So let's dive into the next part. What about devices that don't stay in your Wi-Fi signal? They actually leave your home, like a tablet or a smartphone. That brings us to point number 2, your devices. Many of our internet-enabled devices these days are mobile. They leave our home Wi-Fi signal and go to school, friends' houses, the library, on and on. How can we protect those devices? There are several ways. The first, most basic, is to use the parental controls that are on that device. The great thing about how quickly technology has advanced is that pretty much every device has some sort of inherent parental controls. You can turn off the internet altogether, disable the camera, forbid in-app purchases, etc. iPhone and iPad parental controls are called restrictions. So that's where you'll find the information about what you can turn on or off in your iOS device. On Android, one of the things that we've found is the way the operating system works, it doesn't make it inherently easy to lock down a tremendous amount of parental control. However, the newer Android models do have a way to set up a separate profile so that a child has limited access to that device. And for pretty much all of the solutions that we're going to share with you today, rather than giving you the detailed step-by-step instruction for each thing, because some don't apply to every person watching, we literally want to tell you, please just Google parental controls, Android, and whatever device you have, because you will find whatever is available for your device. There's probably a YouTube video for it, and there'll be step-by-step instructions for whichever things you're trying to lock down. We will say that for Android devices, often your best bet is going to be to download a third-party app that you can use to filter or monitor the online activity that's happening on that device. So that brings us to our next point, accountability and monitoring apps. There are many to choose from, and really it's just a matter of finding out what works for your family, what are your priorities. For example, if you're most concerned about monitoring text messages or a child's GPS location, we might recommend TeenSafe. It's been around for a long time and they have a great product. If you use Circle for your home Wi-Fi signal, you could opt to purchase an extension called Circle Go that's around $10 a month, and that'll apply the same settings to that specific device for the profile of the person using it. And that's whether it's using data or another Wi-Fi network. And for those who desire accountability with periodic reports on all internet activity for each user, even blocked searches, we recommend Covenant Eyes. Accountability is a great way to help train teens for responsible internet use because the reports that you receive give you an opportunity to start discussion about the missteps that they may have taken. Because remember, the goal isn't just to turn off the internet and put your kids in a bubble. The goal is to get a very clear picture of where your kids are struggling, where they're doing well, and what they need to someday be on their own and navigating the digital world with caution and wisdom. So the idea is to let them fail while they're still within your reach so you can help them learn how to do better and grow. And great news, if you do decide to look into Covenant Eyes, you can actually try it for 30 days for free by using the promo code Parents Who Fight. All right, let's go to number 3, your apps. So even if you've locked down your family's Wi-Fi signal, and even if you've locked down every device to make sure that it's as safe as possible, a third layer of vulnerability exists on those devices, and that's within the apps themselves. A lot of parents don't realize that apps are proprietary software, so they're like fortresses that keep blocking and filtering products out. No content viewed within an app can be filtered or blocked. It can't be changed. That's why social media can truly be a risky place for young people because they're using it on apps. And so there's no way to filter out pornography and other dangerous content in social media apps like Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and the list goes on and on. The good news is app content can be monitored to some degree. So if you think of that app like a castle with this giant wall, it's not going to let you into the fortress to change the furniture or take any of the furniture out, but you might be able to fly a drone over that fortress and look in and see where everything is and keep track of what's going on inside those walls. So some of the monitoring that as parents we need to do, it's just part of our responsibility. It's what we call manual monitoring. It's parents staying on top of what their kids are posting along with who they're connected to online. That is so important. But when you have even just 2 teenagers with social media accounts, it can be helpful to enlist some technology for automatic monitoring as well. And the product that we recommend for monitoring social media use primarily is Bark. Bark has a proven track record of being able to help alert parents to potentially dangerous situations. Here's a little bit more information from Bark themselves so you can understand how it works.
Bark's Watchdog engine is powered by advanced technology that analyzes your child's online activity for issues like cyberbullying, sexting, and even depression. Our approach goes way beyond simply looking for keywords, using advanced machine learning and data science techniques to recognize potential dangers, and alerts you via email and text message if it detects anything suspicious. We'll also include recommended actions to help you handle the situation effectively. By combining real-time alerts with these research-based recommendations, Bark puts the power in your hands to proactively address digital dangers to your child. And because Bark is unobtrusive, it helps you build trust and truly partner with your children, teaching them to be safe and become savvy digital citizens.
So that gives you an idea of what Bark is all about. We love the work that they're doing, and we hope it's a helpful resource for you. Another way you can make apps safer to use on that device is to utilize a feature called guided access. In iOS devices, iPad, and iPhone, there's this great feature that you can enable in your accessibility setting. So again, just Google guided access. You'll find ways to enable it. It's very easy. Guided access will lock your child's screen on a specific app. So you can disable parts of the screen, such as a search bar. You can set a time limit where the app will literally just close and shut off and your kid can't do anything more. And that's a great way to let preschoolers and younger kids have time on age-appropriate apps or websites without giving them access to your entire phone or tablet. You set up a secure password in the settings and you're the only one that can turn that guided access session off. In Android, there's a similar feature. It's not called guided access, but it's called pinning. So when you pin an app in Android, you can make sure that your child isn't doing anything on that device other than the app that you have pinned. Setup for both guided access and pinning is pretty simple, and there are several step-by-step videos on YouTube to help you get started. One last piece of app safety. There are a lot of apps you don't want your kids to have access to. Maybe location-based or anonymous apps that are a hotbed for predatory behavior, or just social media apps, whatever you're not comfortable with according to the maturity level. So for any of those things that you don't want your kids being able to have, you can use features like family sharing for iOS devices or the Google Play Store settings for Android devices. And both of these settings will require a parent's approval for an app to be installed. You can also set the maturity level for what kinds of apps your children are able to download and or see within the Google Play Store or the App Store. All right, let's go to number 4. In addition to apps, 2 of the greatest vulnerabilities on any internet-enabled device are search engines and YouTube. Thankfully, there are some great safety features on both of these, and it's just a matter of knowing how to turn those safety features on. Both Google and Bing have a safety mode that you can lock. For Google, simply go to google.com/preferences and you'll see Safe Search at the very top. For Bing, simply go to bing.com/account while you're signed in and click on the Safe Search preferences at the top. How much difference does Safe Search make? Night and day. Google and Microsoft update their Safe Search indexes ongoingly, so they are constantly improving. And one story we often share is that of an 11-year-old girl who was writing a report on dogs. She typed fat dogs into her search engine, and the search results brought an entire page of male genitalia. But if you simply lock your Safe Search feature, that same search term, fat dogs, actually brings up an entire page of dogs who are chubby. Besides having Google and Bing Safe Search enabled, we definitely want to encourage parents to use kid-safe search engines. And don't just use them, but talk to your schools. Talk to other parents about making that the home page for your kids' searches. Teach your kids you're only as safe as where you start. What will happen if your kids aren't taught that, they may use Google Safe Search at your house and search for something and get perfectly safe results. But if they go to another person's house and that person doesn't use Google Safe Search, your child may try to show something to a friend and accidentally expose both of them to something harmful. That's why you're only as safe as where you start. We include YouTube on this 4th point of searching because kids are looking on YouTube for a lot of content, from education to entertainment. Kids love YouTube. In fact, research shows that YouTube is the most popular form of online entertainment for kids. But a lot of parents don't realize that YouTube has a restricted mode, and you definitely need to use it because there's a ton of pornography and other unsavory content on YouTube. How do you set restricted mode? On a desktop or laptop, simply scroll to the very bottom of any YouTube page and toggle restricted mode on. You have the option of locking it using your Google sign-on, which you should do. You should know that this lock is browser specific. So if your laptop uses Chrome and Safari like mine does, you'll have to lock YouTube restricted mode in both places. But once it's locked, no other user can unlock it except for you. You'll know that restricted mode is on when the comments are hidden no matter what video you may be viewing. So what about the YouTube app? A lot of kids watch YouTube on mobile devices. Restricted mode is a bit different on a mobile device. For one thing, it can't be locked, which is annoying, I'm sorry to say, but it can't be. It's a simple toggle feature in your settings. So unfortunately, as easy as it is to turn on, it can be turned off. Just so you know, most kids middle school and up will absolutely know this. But you should still turn it on. Simply go to the 3 dots at the top right corner of your app and click on Settings. We should also mention that if you have younger children, a much safer place for them to be is YouTube for Kids, which is a separate app, and it will keep adult content out. So let's go over what we've covered today. We've talked about how to make your Wi-Fi safer. We've talked about how to make the devices that your family owns safer. We've talked about how apps can be a vulnerability and what you can do to improve the safety of your app usage. And we've talked about searching and how that can be a more kid-friendly and safe activity. We realize that every home and family is unique, so we hope this 4-point strategy can serve as a starting place for you. We hope you'll consider every point here and determine what's going to be the best fit for your family and your home. Most of the monitoring and filtering products we mentioned have free trials, so we hope you'll try some solutions and see what's going to be the best fit. As you grow in your commitment to make your home and family more secure in their digital interactions, think through each of these areas and what vulnerabilities exist. Technology is moving at lightning speed, and we realize that the details covered in this session today may change as apps and platforms become updated. We encourage you to follow our social media feeds on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay truly up to date on the latest trends in app safety and technology. You can also check out parentswhofight.com for more information. Thank you for your time. And remember, there's no parental control as powerful and important as an actual engaged parent. Let's fight for our kids' healthy futures. Let's be parents who fight.
So Chris, here's the gist of the question. A lot of public schools give tablets to kids, Chromebooks. How do you as a parent have control over something that's given to them from their classroom?
Yes.
Yep.
That was our identical situation last year. Our son came home with a book from school, so we knew that we needed to figure that out pretty quickly. And that's really what led us to the circle. Because as soon as that was coming into the Wi-Fi signal, then we really had complete control of what he could be doing in it. And now, in just recent months, we've started using Circle Go. He no longer goes to the school, so it's not monitoring his Chromebook, but if he had one, we would be able to monitor his history, pause his device if it was in another Wi-Fi signal. The only thing I can't guarantee, because I haven't tested it, but if your school uses some Go Guardian, which is one of the popular school safety technology systems.
Is it what school?
Yeah, his school used Go Guardian. I don't know if there would be any conflicts between like fireworks settings, the different ways of like nuts and bolts of how the technologies would interact. But I would encourage anyone whose child is coming home with a device to go to that school and ask a lot of questions. And actually, one of the resources I will make sure I email to Chris is 10 questions you need to ask your school about the technology that they have access to while they're there and they're putting in your hands. So those questions help you get answers that you need to know as far as what the school is taking responsibility for, and it'll open up conversations that you can have with them about what your concerns are.
I would add to that Chromebooks are all online, and for us, it became a distraction a little bit for our son to get his homework done in a timely fashion with the Chromebook. And so we just went to the school and talked. We continued to communicate to the school as we went through that process. And we told them he needs more paper homework. And we just told them the issue, and we needed to use the Chromebook less. And they have to make that work somehow.
And one piece of advice I would give to, especially in the Chromebook world, is that if the kids are using a Chromebook, essentially they're using a Google system. So a lot of schools give them Google email addresses. And
usually the email addresses are to the school. They can
Right.
only email other students, teachers, or whatever.
but they use the Google functionality. And so there is a way that you can monitor that kid's Google account through your Gmail account. I learned how to do that, and I'd be happy to respond by email with those step-by-step instructions for anyone who that would like to know how to do that. And I did need to mention too that we have a special sign-up link for BARC for anybody who is interested, and I'll send that to you, Chris. And they will actually make a very small donation to Parents Who Fight for anybody who uses that. So if it all adds up in the end, it might be helpful.
So I have protection for the Netflix for my kids, and so they're in the kids controlled area. But the problem is that what I've recognized is that within the age bracket, like they have Full House and they have Fuller House. Now back then, Full House was appropriate, whereas now Fuller House is inappropriate. So is there an extension where you can even block out those, because what's appropriate in 2017 would have been totally inappropriate in 2008. So is there an extension where we can block something like that out of Netflix past what's already in the kids or parental control in that area?
That definitely falls into the fortress analogy. You can't block, change any of the settings, any parental controls that are inside of Netflix. Two pieces of advice I would give. This doesn't help with Full House because it's rated G for some reason.
Fuller House.
Fuller House. Right?
Fuller House is also rated G. Which,
Right.
you
So,
know,
but
sure.
you can set a mandatory PIN code for any ratings like PG and up, whatever you want, and then you have to have a PIN code to access that title. That's something that we do for anything that's over G in our home. But the second piece of advice I would give, well, let me preface that with warning of, as a lot of you have probably realized, just because your kid has a profile on Netflix and you as a parent might have a separate profile, your kids can go back and forth between them. And that's a Netflix loophole. And we actually had a campaign last year to try to get people to call Netflix and tell them you want the profiles to be PIN protected, because there's a lot of raunchy stuff on adult. And so even if they can't get to those titles, view the titles, as far as like watching the movie, they can still see the results within Netflix. So if Hot Girls Wanted pops up in the Hot Wheels search when they're on an adult profile, they will be able to see the thumbnail and read all about it, even though they won't be able to watch the movie. So when we spoke to somebody at Netflix about this, what they said to us was, if enough parents complained, we probably would change that. And so my thought was, complain. Let's tell them that that's not safe for our children. So be warned about that, and make sure you are, safeguarding the ratings as much as you can. You have to go to Netflix.com on a computer to make those adjustments. You can't do from an app.
On your
While you're
sign
signed
on a
in.
computer.
Yeah, you have to do it on a computer.
And Netflix really does fall into one of those types of formats that really is not something you can really just leave your kid wide open, like up in their room or something on a TV.
Right.
You don't want, it's something that you definitely have to be engaged in what's happening. For us, it's like it's in the open room that we're normally in.
Mm-hmm.
They're not left alone with it for very long, if at all.
And a strategy for watching Netflix on a tablet could set guided access. You could disable the search feature. So if you want your kid watching, like Janelle's preschool show, they can't get off of kids' profile and go do anything else. So
Because of guided access.
because guided access.
Thank you for sharing all the resources and tools. A lot of them are preventative, and one of the resources we use at our family's home is Common Sense. And so you can have a conversation with your kids about that. If there's a show that they're wondering about, they can look it up themselves and say, "Hey, Mom, or Dad, it's a 9-year-old approved, both by parents and children." So, Common Sense. The other thing is not preventative approach. What happens is if they're in school and their peer says, "Hey, look at this," and they don't have any, or preventative approach on theirs, and they show their peers and they go, "Look, okay, so now the kid is sitting there looking at this, never have seen it before." How would you have a conversation for them to handle that when it does, if it's going to happen, before it happens?
I think I got that. That situation actually happened to us. Part of the reason why parents fight this. We have tried to teach our kids, and we modeled it for them. We're talking about, let's say, having lunch after the football game with a bunch of families that we may not know that well, football team, and they all have their devices. And, we always try to teach our kids to ask the question, what are you going to show me? Not just, hey, look at this. Okay. But what is it? And then we are hanging out with kids who the best case scenario is conversations start really young and you develop a habit in the kid. But, them to sit next to somebody and say, like, does your device have parental controls on it or anything? Like, I've learned to ask that. Now, just as we get into middle and high school, that's going to be horribly uncool. But we did train them to be very skeptical about somebody saying, hey, look at this.
And it can happen really fast, because I just this last week, or last Thursday, I was driving my son and two other players from their school to their football game. They're middle schoolers, two kids were just barely getting to know, and they immediately had their phones out in my back seat, and then they're trying to show Judah something, and so I had to help with kind of saying, hey, what are you showing him, and he had already, I guess, talked to them about something, and so what they were showing was just something funny that was okay. But you have to be quick about it, and you have to continue to teaching. You have to repeat things a lot,
Yeah.
especially with middle school age boys. So you probably know that if you have them.
I have a question in regards to something like Netflix, and it's called PureFlix. I don't know if you've heard about it. I've learned about it from a Christian radio station. And so I downloaded an app for my 4-year-old because I wanted her to see something that was, I considered age appropriate, on a limited basis. And some of the videos on there I thought was completely inappropriate, not in the sense that they were using cuss words or sexual, but the certain cartoons she was watching had really inappropriate attitude, snarky, rude, and
cartoon in the world.
right. And so I was wondering what you thought about that, and if you know of a different type of app or website where videos for small kids are truly innocent and appropriate.
Yeah, the hard thing is, for this like PureFlix, is you can't really look up those titles on Common Sense or get a review anywhere, so you're kind of flying blind. We don't use PureFlix. I just know that a lot of the entertainment on there is less popular or lesser known. Can't find reviews, even not plugged in, which is, focus on the family. So that is a risk because you can't be sure. And there's a lot of strategy in just about everything other than details. So I think the best case scenario is really preview things and know before your kids even watch it. Yes, that's okay. That's not okay. We still do that. Our kids are 13 and 10. I read a show on Netflix during the day today that I wanted to show them tonight, even though it's PC, because I thought there could be, so I ended up watching it twice. But if you have time, that's what I would suggest, because there's nothing else that's going to be proof. And I'm sorry, I don't know of a streaming service or anything like Fruit Family approved. Although I can assure you at some point that will happen because there's a market for it. So.
Well, and the video edit thing you could, what was it? VidAngel was great, but they don't have as many titles now because of the court case that they went through. But that was a service online, VidAngel, that you could watch movies and different things.
Yeah, but it definitely wasn't for preschoolers. Preschoolers is like a totally different ballgame.
But you could edit out the different things, and
Yeah.
If I could mention another way to approach things as well, something Sarah started with our kids is whenever we're watching something, whether it's a movie, whether we've paid money to go see it, which we usually check things out ahead of time, but if something wasn't caught, we use kind of a 3 strikes you're out rule. So, our boys are 10 and 13. That might, if you see 3 things, you come to 3 different things that you don't like about that cartoon or that thing. It's just like, this is too much attitude. The more you're having that conversation with your kids, the more they'll start to respect, and you give them the heads up. Hey, I haven't gotten a really good review on this yet. So as we're watching it, if there's 3 strikes, then plain the strikes would be, then it's going to get turned off. We're going to try to find something else to watch. That's been really great with our kids.
So we're parents of rather young children, and we have nannies and babysitters that come over, and they're going to be viewing things after our children go to bed. But also, we want to set up the guidelines to ensure that other than verbally communicating our wishes and our desires, that our children, aren't accidentally on their phone and using something that they shouldn't be using or seeing anything. And you've laid out some very good guidelines here in kind of the 4 steps that you have. But how would you approach that, other than speaking directly with the nanny or somebody who's babysitting in your house?
I would definitely suggest putting your rules in writing and putting them maybe near where the TV is, laminated or something. So every question about what your expectations are, then it's really clear. And to the point, that's still writing, but we're just very respectful. So, typically our kids aren't with babysitters. We have a really strong church community, so we have a few families that are in our lives for a long time. On occasion, it's necessary for them to be with somebody that they don't know as well from our church. And I mean, I've even asked, grown women, do you struggle with pornography? Because I need to know that before they bring their device and their influence into my home. And that's a hard conversation to have, but if you do it in love, of course it's expected. But yes, definitely suggest having guidelines in writing. And if you do end up using a Wi-Fi filter or monitor, like Circle, I would let that caregiver know. And, when your device comes in here, they may turn it on data. But, anything on our Wi-Fi signal, we have to have these parameters. This is what we feel comfortable with. And Netflix is a really important point because it shows what you've recently viewed. So even for me, time researching like a documentary about sex trafficking, I didn't even think that, now it's in my recently viewed suggested titles. And I literally had to call Netflix to get them to scrub that from my history because I didn't want kids accidentally seeing it when we were looking for a family movie. So I would be clear about what your expectations are that they can watch on Netflix, and just be really clear.
Well, that was really helpful. Hopefully you found information and direction, just kind of perspective on what the issues are. And like I said, I have some resources in the back that you can take a look at, and it's just a thumbnail of many books and periodicals that are available to be able to help and guide through that whole parenting season of life as you're dealing with kids.
My wife reminded me of a moment that was important in my young son's life, and so let me just share that with you and we'll let you go. We're doing really good on time. We're actually going to get you out early. For once, we're getting you out early. Now, I could tell you a story and then tell you another one, but I'm just going to try and limit it to one. This happened actually, I believe, when we were in Idaho Falls. We were in Barnes & Noble. This had to be maybe 5 or 6 years ago at this point. So my son, who's now 12, was probably 6, somewhere around 6. But we went into the bathroom at Barnes & Noble. And so we went into the stall, and we must have had a bag or a backpack or something. And so we lowered down the baby changing station there in the stall. And lo and behold, there was lots of pornography that had been stuffed in that baby changing station. And so when I pulled it down, these pages just flipped open. And my 6-year-old son is like, "Dad, what's that?" And here's the reality about raising kids in a porn world. There are just gonna be moments that you can't control. And immediately I'm like, oh, that moment, dear God, like, close this up, right? And, but I actually was happy. I'm happy to tell you that I really had my right mind about myself, and so we just closed them up. And I said, son, I'm so sorry that you had to see that. I just want to. I've had lots of bad parenting moments. This is one of my good ones. So let me tell you this, right? Just how I walked my son through this, right? So I said, son, I'm so sorry that you had to see that. Here's the truth, buddy, that there's a lot of that stuff in our world about men and women having sex and it being pictures and videos and in movies. And I said, I would want you to see that. Never see it, truthfully, but at some point you're going to see it. And this was the first time. And so sex is a beautiful thing, and God created it. We are made in God's image, so I never, ever want you to think that sex is dirty or gross or bad. It's a beautiful thing when it's stewarded well. But unfortunately, there's just a lot of poor stewardship around it. And son, can I tell you the truth? There's parts of my life that I haven't done that well. And I've had to go to Jesus and ask him to help me. And I have to walk that out well. So, son, now that you've seen that, you just need to know that sex is a thing, that God made man and woman different, and he made them to have sex. And so we immediately had a sex conversation right there. And I didn't go into great detail, but I just said, son, this is, and it's how you make babies, but it's more than just that. It's a way that a husband and a wife love each other, and it can be lots of fun. And so we'll have lots of years ahead where Daddy and you will have these conversations, and you're going to learn about this stuff from me, and it's going to be okay. And I'm like, are you okay, buddy? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. So it was almost like, I think at some point he was like rolling his eyes back in his head like, oh, just stop already, right? But you just have to engage. You can't freeze in those moments. You can't ignore those moments. They are just going to happen. And as long as you're relationally engaged with your kids and committed to them, I'll be honest, I don't even think my son remembers that that's happened. He's never brought it up since. And so we're going on our coming of age trip with Eli. I'm going on my coming of age trip with Eli next year. And so it's going to be 5-6 days of dedicated time, just him and I. We're going to have lots of conversations. Another thing that I wanted to put in front of you that I failed to earlier when I was talking, Pastor Don has a bunch of books out there that'll be helpful for you to look at in terms of resources of how to proactively talk to your kids about sex, beauty of sexual intimacy within marriage, but also the reality of illicit sexuality and pornography, all that. Pastor Ben has also developed a system. He's actually on a man weekend, and his wife is on a woman weekend. So their daughter is 11 and their son is 9. And so Bridget is with Azariah and Ben is with Judah this weekend, and they're investing the whole weekend into their kids. And they actually have developed a system. There are 3 books that they're using with their son over the course of time, 4 books that they're using with their daughter. And he's actually sent me an email with those books. And so I don't have that printed out for you, but if you want that, email me, chris@mc4s.org, and I will send that to you. And he's actually articulated 9 to 11 boys, 12 to 14 boys, 15 plus boys, and same thing with girls, like books that go in stages to help you have proactive conversation with your children. So as that would be helpful to you, because again, what this was focused on is let's guard. But more than that, we need to be investing, right? We need to be helping our kids along in their sexual identities and practices. So let's do that as well. And I think we can end on that note. Any other questions before we let you go? Great question. I think you can do some things, but obviously you're going to have limitations. And what I would encourage you about the beauty of the body of Christ is that where you're raising your kids in community, you as a mother can seek to help build bridges with men that you would deem trustworthy to develop relationship with your son. I know for a fact that Pastor Don has engaged with young men around this who haven't had fathers. I currently, right now, am engaged with a young man. I started actually walking with him, if you will, when he was 13. He's now 16 or 17, a young man in our church, single mom. And so in the last 6 months, we've had conversations about 2 girls that he likes and what, is it normal for me to feel this? And so, of course, those conversations, when he was 13 and we had the first conversation, I did all the talking. I'm like, bud, you okay? And I'm just sharing with you what I would share with my own 13-year-old son. I just want you to, I want to treat you as though you were my own in this regard. And so, now at 16 and 17, we've met in the office. There's a nice trail back here. We go on walks. Sometimes guys like to be shoulder to shoulder rather than face to face to have the conversations about sex. So, but in the last 6 months, he seems so, I'm kind of amazed. Like, he's really okay about talking about, this girl, she's really great and attractive. And I'm like, That's fantastic. Let's talk about it, right? So I would really encourage you to look for men that could walk with you, who could invest as you raise your son. Because we have to acknowledge that there will be limitations. That said, I do think that you can have real conversations with your son around sexuality and augment what you're able to offer your son. I don't think that you are disqualified just because you're a female and he's a male. I think God will give grace and favor to that as it's in your heart. Just look for somebody who could augment what you're offering. There's also just a dynamic that for some of us, sometimes I'm just grateful for a community. Like, for instance, we have a woman, and she is one of our overseers in Foursquare. We have a woman who has taken an interest in Emma and just will periodically pick her up and invest in her. And I am so grateful because I know that Emma might feel more free to share some things with her than at times Emma's going to feel sharing with us. We have a very open relationship. My perspective of relationship with our daughter, it's very open. We talk very openly. And even still, I just realized that there may be times, places, and spaces where she's going to be able to process with others what she may not be able to process with us. This past summer, we made it a priority to get Emma down with some of our closest friends in Southern California who walk vibrantly with Jesus, and they're raising their own kids. But we just want to have others speaking into our daughter's life that we trust. And so we sent her down to Southern California for a whole week to go have fun, and we asked Missy, the mom, hey, Missy, would you just really dig in with Emma a little bit? Would you spend some time with her? Would you invest in her? And would you have eyes on her and tell us what you're seeing? And so wherever you can do anything like that, where you're in a community, developing a relationship, and just invite others that you trust to have input in your kids' lives. I know that's easier said than done. I know that. But keep working at that. It's a worthy cause.
And with that, I think oftentimes we feel inhibited to ask somebody to have that type of a commitment. There are individuals that would love to be able to do that. It'll just take time to build relationship and kind of get that established. But particularly, as we serve married couples, single parents, you can't do it alone. And there are many that would jump at the opportunity to be able to, I raised 2 daughters. I would love to hang with boys. I got a grandson due in December, but I got a lot of years before I get to do the guy things. But there will be many that would be willing to jump in there and absolutely do that. It just takes time, and don't. I always let people say no for themselves. So be bold and ask. Okay, all right.
I think we're good. Any other questions? Yes. So I first heard about this from another pastor who lamented the fact that we Western Christians have lost so many of our traditions that other cultures and other even religious cultures practice. For instance, the Jews, right? That whole idea of a bar mitzvah, that a community gathers and looks at a young man and says, you are now a young man. And that comes with privileges and it comes with responsibilities. And so we're conferring on you, welcome to young adulthood. And here are the privileges that accompany that, and here are the expectations that we place upon you. And so I think it's really a good thing for us as parents and as families to even think about this. I think there are various things you could do from something similar to a bar mitzvah. Gather the community at 13 or 16 and invest in your son, invest in your daughter. But for us, we decided that we would do the coming of age trip at somewhere around the 13th birthday. And we were able to do that with Emma in a glorious fashion. The Lord provided for that. I was thinking Leavenworth. They ended up in London. And the Lord just made that happen. Really, I scoffed at that idea. But it was about 5 years in the making. And I scoffed at that idea, but Jen and Emma ended up in London for 5 days using mileage that we had accrued for years, and somebody provided us a place. And so it really worked. And I tried to talk Eli into some epic trip next year. He's just, Dad, I just want to go watch the Dodgers in Disneyland. And I'm like, you're my son. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Right? So we wanted to combine fun activities, and obviously we're investing a lot in this. Like, we're going to have to forego a larger family trip to make the years that these happen probably. I know others who just have done smaller things. For instance, I know one pastor who had like 12 and 14 and 16 and 18. He had 3 sons, and so he did camping trips at each age, and he developed things that he wanted to talk about at each point, knowing that they were at one point just beginning to get into puberty. At another point, they'd been in puberty for a while. How are they doing? 16, you're now 16, you're a young man. And then in 18, you're now about to be out on your own, and he just developed a kind of a tiered thought or process. So I really like that idea. We haven't done as ornate of a process as he did, but we intend to do the 13 and then, of course, just keep checking in. It may be that we do something around 16, especially with our daughter. So that's something that Jennifer and I still need to figure out, truth be told.
One of the things, as I was doing reading and research over the summertime, gearing for this time, I read both Christian books and articles as well as those in mainstream culture. And there's one of the books I have in the table back there. It's called Sexploitation. And it's written from a non-Christian perspective, dealing with the whole issues of pornography, addiction, and that type of thing. And the sum total of their research is phenomenal as far as the studies and the percentages and everything else. That the moral directive that they have is, we know it's bad, but we can't really say anything is bad, so try not to do it as much. So I read the book, and I'm thinking that we live in a culture that is everything's relative. So who am I to say what somebody else does is wrong? And so there's no moral foundation to be able to make those judgments, those determinations of what we could do. Call black and white. Call good, evil, evil. And so going through this, and it was by an academic in going through, and it's like, this is just completely worthless, because there's no substance behind here to be able to say, this is good, this is what we need to do, and this is wrong. Have we lost that? Is there a way individually, the biggest thing that we can do is make individual choices and decisions on how we choose to raise our kids and what we have exposure to and where we spend our money. Is that going to make a difference in the CBS, NBC, Netflix, Amazon, whatever the maybe not, but for us, this is what we choose to do. The book that I referenced at the very beginning, The TechWise Family, has some really culturally really radical ideas on how to raise kids and create an environment of creativity rather than watching screens and spending hours of time doing things. And so we look at it, man, it's so restrictive. But it's remarkable. The daughter of the author does the preface for the book, 16 years old, and she's just very impressive. She says, I didn't miss anything. And one of their rules was no screens before double digits in years. So you don't watch anything, TV, cell phone, tablet, computer, if it was, with school, with limitations, but before you reach 10 years old. And these kids are just off the charts bright, and it's all because of decisions that individuals made along the way. So we are swimming against the stream, absolutely. But what we can do for ours is make the decisions on a daily basis as to what's going to benefit them and the direction that they're going to go.
Well, thank you, Don, for setting tonight up. Don has a passion in parenting and marriage. More is coming. We would really invite you to come in October. We, as your pastors, leaders, just want to make ourselves available to you. So if you want to email us, if you ever want to set up a time for coffee just to talk some of these things through, we're doing our best as parents. I know you're doing your best as parents. There's no shame in doing your best. It's just about equipping, garnering more tools for the task. And so if we can help you with that, we'd be glad to. And you can tell that we're learning as we go. Jennifer and I need to get Circle from Disney, and Jennifer and I need to get Bark, and we need to get Covenant Eyes. That's what we need to do. So we have our to-do list. I hope you do as well. Okay, thank you for coming. Lord bless you and keep you. And we'll hope to see you, I guess, on Sunday, huh?